Hello friends, it's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums today with another video talking about tarot with the inclusion of trying to add in intuition and how to utilize intuition while reading tarot. So I've done a couple different videos lately where I had talked about how to utilize the symbols, the numbers, the aspects within a tarot deck to kind of help you read tarot. But one of the things that I get the most questions about is really how to kind of add all of those elements together in order to really do an actual reading. And so I did a video on how to read and how to kind of put everything together. But then I also wanted to do a video explaining how I utilize intuition to add a little bit more nuance, a little bit of a new layer into all of my readings. And so while all of the symbols and everything may assist you in understanding how to interpret, the numbers, the symbols, the astrology, and other aspects that come with a tarot card. I think the most significant thing that we can kind of take away from everything is adding in the intuitive piece. So while I understand that not everyone thinks that you should read using intuition, I know that there's a lot of people out there that are very much into the esoteric, occult, metaphysical knowledge that comes within the tarot as it was written, especially with the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. There is a lot of discourse, and I am someone that has actually studied a lot of these symbols and numbers and different things that were put together by different schools and schools of thought or whatever. But I think we tend to feel like there's something that maybe is a little bit more challenging, a little bit more, I don't know. I feel like it's hard at times to kind of allow yourself to say it's okay to know the things that are going on with these cards and these systems, but then also giving it an opportunity to say that this can also be a tool that can open us up to our intuitive aspects and trusting that. So in other videos, you've probably seen me talk about this learning tarot deck, and I think it's good to have something that is easy to have some messages on the actual card because it allows us to bounce off of that energy to utilize this. And it's funny that I have this card that just kind of popped out, the Judgment card, because I do feel like I do get a bit of judgment for how I teach and how I talk about tarot and what I share about tarot. So while we can focus on the messages that are on this card, I like to use my intuition to kind of help me understand what this may mean for me overall and how to kind of bring it all together with my message and what I have going on. Now, I have been practicing for quite a few years, so it can make it a little bit challenging or a little bit confusing to some people as to why I feel certain cards read a certain way during a reading or how I would interpret that message while the card has come out, and why I would talk about, this card specifically as, this being Judgment, and talking about how I feel that I may be judged because of the videos that I post or how I talk about things. In this world of so much information, it's so easy to feel like you can't always share certain information, or that some information is not always going to be received. So for me, seeing this card kind of pop out as I'm wanting to talk about these different subjects, I just think it's kind of interesting, and it kind of allows me to see that maybe some of the judgment that I'm feeling may be something that has more to do with who I am as an individual versus what is actually going on. So if I wanted to kind of intuit a little bit more information about why I feel this way, I would pull a couple more cards. And so here we got the High Priestess, which is a card about intuition and listening to yourself. But it can also feel a little bit like there's some illusions or something that we're just not seeing so clearly. And so I just think it's interesting to get both of these cards when I'm wanting to talk about tarot and your intuition, because I know that there's so much of this like back and forth and this discourse as to whether there is a thing as such a thing as an intuitive tarot reader or intuitive tarot reading. And to me, I feel like everything is a tool to kind of help us on our journey, to help us with different aspects of connecting and to feel a sense of bringing together all of the symbolism, bringing together the messages in a way that allows us to have a little bit more clarity and to see things much more clearly as we move forward with different aspects of our lives and things that we're trying to do at this current time. So to have the Judgment card and also the High Priestess here, I just think it's kind of funny. As I'm trying to do this video about how to utilize your intuition and also how to utilize tarot in conjunction with your intuition. Now, one of the things that I didn't really talk about before is that intuition is such a big part of what I do. I have learned to listen, to quiet down, to create a practice that works for me, that allows me to learn how my intuition speaks to me. And our intuition is so personal. So let's pull another card here. So here we have the 10 of Wands reverse, which I feel can just talk about maybe holding back, maybe feeling like we're not really sharing too much about what we have going on with ourselves and what's, happening in our lives at the current moment. So it can just feel a little bit like it's challenging to kind of get out there because we may feel like we're carrying a lot of burdens. Maybe we're holding back in some ways. And so it's a very interesting card because if I were to just read it off of like what is on the actual cards, the messages are going to be a little bit different because it's going to be talking more about like burdening yourself, not taking responsibility, like stress, things like that. When in actuality, because I'm trying to read this more intuitively, the message is a little bit different, much like this last card that I pulled, which is going to be the 6 of Swords reverse, which can just talk about some interesting messages that like don't really always make sense to me, but it can just talk about maybe in this sense, I feel like this card is really just kind of reflecting that it's challenging to kind of move into the transition, to kind of allow ourselves to kind of get away from certain things that we feel should be how things are. And again, tarot is ancient, it's old. It is a practice that has been done over hundreds of years, and thousands, if not maybe millions of people have been touched by tarot. And I think sometimes we forget that as many readers as there's been out there, that is how many people have taken something from the tarot and have learned something from it, have utilized it as a tool in their lives, whether it's to divine, whether it's to connect, whether it's for spiritual growth, whether it's just to kind of help others around them. The messages aren't always going to be copy and paste and the exact same thing. And we have to kind of give ourselves that grace and the understanding that everyone is going to add in their own message and add in their own flair to what is going on with their tarot deck and how they're reading things. So with the 6 of Swords reversed, I feel like this can be a card that can be a reminder that maybe we are a little resistant to some of the changes. Maybe we have been holding back because it makes us a little bit uncomfortable. And as we kind of go back into the 10 of Wands reverse, we're seeing a lack of momentum and movement and releasing and kind of moving to the next thing. And I think with utilizing tarot as a tool for connecting to your intuition, It's, to me, really is just saying, how can we read the whole story? How can we not just read each individual card as it is and having it be clunky or disconnected, and kind of forgetting that essentially tarot, the deck itself, is a story. It's the story of the fool's journey for the major cards. And then we see all of these different characters, all of these different elements, all of these different things kind of growing together. But we tend to forget that. And even as we have our cards that we pull for ourselves, that is a part of our story. So, like, what is the story that we're doing? How is it making sense? How are things coming together? You know, how is it that this one card feeds into this one and this one and this one? And how do they all kind of correlate to kind of give me guidance, to give me an understanding? And even if I just take some of the things that I've talked about in my previous videos, where we're talking about, um, numerology and astrology and, things like that, we can kind of see how everything is kind of tied together. We have the 20 and then we have the 2 here, which to me can just really talk about, choices, balance, harmony. And then we have the 10, which is kind of also saying, like, we're ready to move into the next phase, but we need to start making choices that inform us so that we can kind of talk about the number 6, which maybe that's where we're blocked, is rewards and responsibilities with certain aspects of ourselves. And then that's just kind of giving us a sense of, like, where is it that our faith is kind of taking us at this point in time, and what is it that we need to prioritize moving forward. But I think sometimes we tend to forget to look at the entire story. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from an intuitive tarot reading, or to use tarot in a much more intuitive manner. It's not that you have to get the meanings of the cards right. There's been plenty of times where I've done a reading and I kind of intuit something else that maybe doesn't always make the most sense to everybody else. But to me, by seeing the story laid out and what I'm picking up on and what's kind of coming through, I still utilize those messages because it helps me to connect more of the reading to whoever is inquiring over something, versus me kind of saying, like, well, this card means this, and this card means that, and this card means this, and this card means that. That's fine. Like I tell people all the time, there's no tarot police that's going to come for you and be like, oh, you have to read it exactly this, and the card is always going to be this. Now, just to kind of like show you, yes, I do read reversals. And so I know for a lot of people, they tend to get a little overwhelmed with all of the card meanings because they feel that they have to memorize all 78 of them. And then if we add in the reversed, that is like another 78. So making a total of 156 meanings possible here. But by having kind of the overall picture here, I can see the message. I can see that it's like, okay, we're on the precipice. We're trying to make some changes. We're trying to make some growth. And like I've said before in other videos, you can always pull another clarifier card. If this is still confusing, pull another card or start over. Sometimes the messages are going to feel a little bit confusing. And that's a big thing about reading tarot, is that we have to have an understanding that if we're not emotionally clear, our deck isn't always going to give us that clarity either. And I think it's good to have maybe different decks that maybe you feel connected to, ones that are going to be like a straight shooter. I have a few that are like that. This is one deck that I really enjoy using for clients because it is just very straight up. It's just kind of blunt at times, where the messages just seem very, very clear. So I'm not saying that you have to have a ton of decks, but maybe find one that really clearly speaks to you. Now, this one is giving me the 7 of air, or the 7 of swords. We have the 3 of water here. So the 3 of cups. And then finally, we have the chariot. Now, because I'm not asking like a specific question here, and this is kind of how I do a lot of my readings, is I just lay out the cards. I kind of see like what's going on. So the 7 of swords is a card that can really talk about secrets, sneaking away. In traditional tarot, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, you would see like a figure that has all the swords and he's trying to kind of like sneak off. And so there is a sense of like, maybe there's a level of not being quite honest. Maybe there is like feeling like you're missing something, like something's just not really clicking. And I feel like for a lot of us, that is a big thing that kind of keeps us from being able to kind of move forward with our practices, because we feel like, well, how do I know that I'm not missing something? How do I know that I'm getting the entire picture? And maybe for some of us, we may feel like there's like secret knowledge that we don't have access to. And with the Three of Water or the Three of Cups, I feel like we're getting a little bit of this energy of like, we need to communicate, we need to celebrate, we need to kind of come together with those that get us. And with the Chariot, it's an invitation for us to kind of get that momentum going, to overcome the obstacles that we see are in the way. Now, all of these cards, I feel, are kind of giving us this like sense of we need to kind of draw out the fears that we have so that we can truly communicate the things that we need and find that momentum, that movement as we're trying to kind of move forward. But that is just how I'm reading the cards right now. Because of the cards that we have here, if this was like me asking about a specific question or something like that, I would say a lot of these cards would even state that there's something going on, something that maybe the person is not seeing quite so clearly. So it can be a little bit confusing. And this is why I feel like using your intuition is so important and so beneficial, so that you are not getting this kind of confusing sort of energy in your readings, and you are able to, sorry, my dog just sneezed, you're able to really understand what those cards are trying to tell you, especially if you're like, oh, reading it by the book, it's going to feel stilted, it's going to feel clunky, it's going to feel a little disjointed. Having an understanding and trying to intuitively connect to the messages, to what's coming through, is going to add another layer of nuance and also a little bit more of a connection regarding whatever it is that you're trying to do. Now, here's another deck that I don't really use too often. It's not a deck that I purchased myself, so it's not one that I reach for all of the time, but because it was gifted to me from someone who is no longer Earthside, I have become more used to trying to utilize it for my kind of personal journey, my readings and things of that nature. This one has a much more gentle kind of way. And this is why I think it's interesting to have decks that maybe have a different voice so that you can kind of connect to them and figure out what works for you. And by utilizing your intuition, you would realize what deck works for you. So here, first off, we have the Three of Fire or the Three of Wands, which is a card of planning and strategies and kind of getting out there and exploring. And then we have the Seven of Fire, which again, this is a card, or the Seven of Wands. So this is going to be very much a card of like feeling like there's a lot of conflict, feeling like we're kind of being pushed to the edge. And then finally, the Seven of Earth or the Seven of Pentacles, which is a card of just like awaiting results and kind of we've planted the seeds, we've done the hard work, we're just waiting for the harvest to really truly come in. So here, if we talk about the messages, we have this like sense of the Three of Wands and also the Seven of Wands. And so we're kind of getting this sense of like, you know, where's the fire? What's kind of rushing us? What are we trying to do here? What have we planned for? What are we kind of getting out there to do? And the Seven of Wands typically has like figures kind of fighting and kind of feeling like you're being pushed to your limit, while also having to understand like we're having to just kind of wait for things to happen. And then finally, I just pulled the Justice card, which is a card of balance and harmony, but it's also a card that is saying that we need to detach. So we've done the hard work, we've done what we needed, it's time to just detach and just let it be what it needs to be. By seeing all of the energies and having a general understanding of each of the cards, I can kind of look at the overall message here, which to me is just really signifying that maybe some of the things that we're trying to kind of get out there and do may be very beneficial or fun right now, but we may also feel like there's some challenges that arise because of the things that we're trying to do or the inexperience that we may have, as a three may bring us a little bit of that sense of inexperience or trying to expand in some way, while the sevens are very spiritual numbers. So it can be very much about intuition and connecting to that kind of energy, and also understanding that we may just have to kind of grow with the things that are happening. And then justice is kind of saying, okay, it's time for us to detach. It's time for us to bring things back into balance because something is just not working, or we have to learn how to detach from the message or how it would be received. Because I think that's the biggest thing that tends to hold back a lot of people from reading tarot, is that they cannot detach their perception of how the message would be received from the actual reading. And that is something that is going to hold you back. And you have to just kind of separate. You have to kind of pull away from that sort of energy and be okay with, not getting it right. There's been plenty of times where I've read something for myself and I've gotten it completely wrong, but it was a message that I needed at that time. And I wouldn't have followed through on certain things if I would not have been okay with just reading a card the way that I was reading it. Another thing that's really helped me is doing like those daily practices every day, just like pulling a card and taking time out and journaling about it and taking time out to just kind of try to connect with the messages and seeing, where did this energy of this card show up in my life for the day. So if I'm pulling, let's say I pulled the 3 of Wands for the day, I would look and see, like, is there some sort of expansion? Is there some sort of momentum and movement and creativity that I need to focus on? Am I communicating more about these things? Am I connecting more with people in a creative or expansive way? And as I kind of notice those trends, I get to understand and connect a little bit more with those cards, because I'm taking time out to kind of get to know how those cards are showing up for me. And sometimes the messages or how I interpret a card is a little bit different, just because it's not how other people would, or it's not exactly how other people perceive those messages. And that's the beauty of reading and tarot and things like that. I watch other tarot readers and I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of that card that way. And it's something that is so enlightening. And it's because they're using their intuition to kind of to connect to certain cards or connect to certain messages in a particular way that maybe I don't always have an understanding of. So I think this is why it's imperative for people to develop that practice with themselves, an intuitive practice that allows them to feel like they can trust the messages that they're receiving, that they can trust how they're viewing things, and having an understanding that even if you feel afraid that you'll read something wrong, it's not going to be the end of the world. By connecting to your intuition with like low risk things, such as like little intuitive tests, little things like that, that just feel a little bit easy, where there isn't a lot of pressure being put on you, that may also be a way for you to develop your intuition so that you feel better. Just like whenever I'm picking cards, I'm very much about just letting myself be guided by whatever it may be. Having an intuitive practice and taking time out to kind of slow down and listen to your intuition is going to help you. And I feel like, if anything, it's only going to add a little bit more nuance, a little bit more energy, more like connection to the readings that you're doing, not just for yourself, but the people that come into your life. So I just think it's a beautiful tool to add into your tarot practice. And while this may not be a like how-to and maybe the best guide for how to connect more to your intuition, I hope that you give it an opportunity and you allow it to grow in your life. Because since I have switched over to trying to read in a much more organic and intuitive way, I feel like my readings really have a lot more like substance. They have a little bit more of a sense of direction. I can kind of give a little bit more of the connection that maybe I didn't feel like I was able to do several years ago when I first started, because I was trying to be too by the book, too by the rules. And that's not always how life is. Life has so many different shades and things that kind of contribute to how we perceive things and how we take on things or understand them. And I think by having this as a tool of understanding, of saying, okay, I can use my intuition as I'm reading these things. And while, yes, having a good foundation in tarot is always going to be a wonderful tool in your own arsenal, utilizing your intuition with tarot, I feel, is like the icing on the cake. It's going to help you really connect to messages that maybe you weren't seeing previously, or that maybe you were kind of like, I don't really know what this card means. Because even as many years as I've been doing this, and as many times as I've gotten certified in different ways, I still have moments where I'm like, I don't really know the energy of this card, or the energy of this card is hard for me to pinpoint. And I'm not afraid to say, I don't know it all. I'm over here and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to learn. So give yourself space to just kind of connect. And just like this, just like me saying, okay, I just want to pick up a card, and here I have the devil. The devil card is one of these cards that really is continuously showing up for me at this current time, because I feel like I'm currently having a lot of these struggles come up for me, where I am a little bit of a workaholic. And so I'm looking at where I've changed myself. Where am I keeping myself stuck? Where am I not allowing myself to have some freedom? Where am I not connecting to myself? And so by doing things like this, where you're just kind of not making it so serious, I guess, I think a lot of people take it super, super serious. And I think tarot, again, it's a tool. It's up to you how you decide to use it and how you want to add it into your life. I hope that you're able to trust yourself enough to say, hey, this is more of like an intuitive tool for me to kind of understand myself a little bit better, so that I can kind of tune into the energies here and understand them a little bit better, or give them a little bit of maybe guidance, or being able to understand what is coming my way a little bit more, and just make sense of this crazy, crazy world that we all live in. But, we're all here. We're all trying to learn. Give yourself an opportunity to kind of figure out how tarot speaks to you, or how your cards want to speak with you, and their personality, and giving them a chance to kind of show you and share with you what their voice is. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from using intuition in your tarot practice, is that you get to kind of understand and learn how your decks want to speak with you. And this is why I have all these different videos where I talk about what I love with tarot and what I've learned. Take it easy. Bye.